What if I told you that the world might be witnessing the rise of the Antichrist at this very moment? Sounds exaggerated? Maybe, but history teaches us a valuable lesson. The greatest events in human history never arrive with glaring warnings. They unfold silently, right before our eyes, while most people remain distracted. And what if the signs are already everywhere? What if, without realizing it, we are watching the construction of a power that could change the course of history forever? Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, is not just another name in the global political landscape. He is a key figure in Middle East peace negotiations, a strategist who moves within the most exclusive circles of power, and a silent influencer in decisions that shape the world's future. But what intrigues the most is not just his meteoric rise. It's the disturbing coincidences surrounding his trajectory. From his close ties to Israel to his involvement in global politics, from the alliances he has built to his direct connection with a building numbered 666. All of this has led many to ask, are we witnessing the literal fulfillment of biblical prophecies? If this theory is true, we are facing an unprecedented event in history. But is all of this just a big misunderstanding? Or are we ignoring the signs because they don't present themselves in the way we expected? The answer to this question might change the way you see the present and the future. And after learning the facts, you will never see the world the same way again. The theory linking Jared Kushner to the Antichrist did not emerge from nowhere. It draws directly from a mix of biblical prophecies, political conjectures, and theological speculations. To some, he is merely an influential businessman, the son-in-law of one of the most controversial presidents in American history. To others, he fits almost surgically into the characteristics described in the Book of Revelation. But what exactly put this man on the radar of those who believe they are witnessing the signs of the times? Well, the answer is not simple, but one thing is certain. When we analyze recent events, the impression that a hidden pattern is forming becomes inevitable. For those who have never heard of him, Jared Kushner is much more than just a political advisor. He has direct influence over decisions that shape global geopolitics and, interestingly, was deeply involved in peace negotiations in the Middle East. The Bible speaks of a charismatic leader, someone who would bring an apparent solution to global conflicts but who, behind the scenes, would have a very different plan. And this is where what many consider to be too many coincidences to be just coincidences comes into play. After all, if history teaches us anything, it is that figures of great influence often carry with them a veil of mystery and ambiguity. But before simply swallowing this theory or dismissing it as another conspiracy delusion, it is necessary to understand what really supports it. First, Kushner is not just any piece on the board. He has close ties to Israel, an essential role in global agreements, and, to top it off, a curious involvement with a building numbered 666 on Fifth Avenue in New York. Now, for those who study the scriptures, that number immediately raises a red flag. After all, could it be that a mere investor fits so perfectly into an archetype described thousands of years ago? Or are we simply connecting the wrong dots? Regardless of the answer, one thing cannot be ignored. There is an atmosphere of expectation in the air. While some see a great benefactor, others see the foreshadowing of something much bigger. But this idea of a global leader who will bring peace before the storm is not new. In fact, it is a concept as old as organized civilizations. Messianic leaders emerge when humanity is on the brink of chaos. And let's be honest, the current scenario could not be more conducive to that. Who wouldn't want a savior in times of uncertainty? And if we are talking about a savior, it is only fair to look at what the prophecies say about him. Because, as you will see next, the biblical descriptions of this charismatic and persuasive leader are, at the very least, eerily precise. Biblical prophecies leave no doubt. The Antichrist will be a globally influential leader, someone who will gain the trust of nations and offer solutions to humanity's most intricate conflicts. But his true identity will only be revealed when it is too late. The Book of Revelation describes this figure as a master of persuasion, capable of uniting the world under his leadership with promises of peace and prosperity. He will not arrive as an obvious tyrant. On the contrary, his approach will be subtle, engaging, and irresistible. This detail is crucial because, if evil presented itself in an obvious way, no one would follow it. Throughout history, Many have been pointed out as potential antichrists: Roman emperors, political leaders, tech moguls. However, what distinguishes this figure is not just his political power but his ability to deceive even the most vigilant. The biblical text suggests that he will bring a period of temporary peace, resolve crises, and offer answers that no one else has been able to provide. But this peace will only be the calm before the storm. This means that when we look at figures like Jared Kushner, it is impossible not to notice some intriguing parallels with this description. He does not have an aggressive speech, he does not act like a dictator, but his influence spreads silently, reaching political, diplomatic, and technological spheres. Now, think about today's world. Economic crises, conflicts between nations, ideological polarization. In a scenario like this, the arrival of a charismatic, articulate leader with practical solutions would be seen as a relief. And that is exactly where the danger lies. The Antichrist will not present himself as an enemy but as a hero, someone who will be celebrated before revealing himself. For many biblical scholars, this explains why people will not recognize him until they are already fully under his control. And, as it seems, some pieces on the board are already moving in that direction. If there is one event that further strengthens the theory that Jared Kushner could be linked to the role of the Antichrist, it is the Abraham Accords. This treaty, signed in 2020, marked a historic moment. For the first time in decades, Israel and some Arab countries established formal diplomatic and trade relations. For many, this was a positive milestone, a step toward peace in the Middle East. But for those who study biblical prophecies, this movement seems eerily aligned with what the book of Revelation suggests about the Antichrist bringing a false peace before the Great Tribulation. The central issue here is not just the existence of the agreement but Kushner's crucial role in its articulation. He was not a traditional diplomat, nor an expert in international negotiations, yet he had direct influence in establishing a treaty that involved historically rival nations. And that is, at the very least, curious. After all, according to prophecies, the Antichrist will be someone who brings a global peace pact, managing to convince even the most skeptical of his ability to unify warring peoples. But the problem arises when we remember what the scriptures say. This peace will only be a temporary illusion, a deception to prepare the ground for something much greater. Now, think with me. An agreement like this, which seemed impossible until recently, appeared almost out of nowhere, with Kushner leading its negotiation. But is he really building a path of stability, or just setting the stage for something darker? When we look at history, we can see patterns repeating. Leaders who are celebrated at first but later become figures very different from what everyone imagined. What many theorists point out is that if Kushner continues to gain influence, this could be just the first of many steps toward the fulfillment of prophecies. So, are we really seeing what is happening around us? Or are we, as has happened so many times throughout history, distracted, anesthetized by a false sense of normality while something much bigger and more dangerous unfolds behind the scenes? The Bible has always warned that the Antichrist would not appear in an obvious way but as a charismatic leader, someone who would bring promises of peace, prosperity, and solutions to the world's problems. And the question that remains is, are we already living that moment? Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. Nothing happens by chance. The choice is in your hands. And if you want to keep exploring these questions, understanding the backstage of what is really happening in the world, and strengthening your understanding of these topics, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because what comes next might be even more revealing than everything you've seen so far.